Hi, my name is Julia Wilkinson. I'm a two-time Canadian Olympic swimmer. I'm also a 2010 graduate of Texas A&M University, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about goal setting, a little bit about coming back from failure, resetting your goals even when things don't really go as planned, and the best way I know to do that is to tell you about my journey to the Olympic Games. I grew up in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, the festival city, also the hometown of the one and only Justin Bieber. I started swimming literally before I could walk because my mom used to take me to mother-taught swimming lessons, and apparently I was a late bloomer because they would say to stand all the kids on the side of the pool, and my mom would have to be all embarrassed and say, well, my daughter can't swim yet, so she can't stand yet, so I would have to sit on the side while the other kids were standing. So literally swimming before walking. I was always meant to be a swimmer. However, my older sister loved the water. She was the kid who you couldn't get out of the pool. Her fingers would be pruny. We'd be at the beach, and my mom would be constantly having to drag her out of Lake Huron long after the sun set. But I was completely different. When my mom first started taking me to swimming lessons, when you're really little, they count to 3 and they dunk you under the water. So you're holding the child and you say 1, 2, 3, and you dunk them, and it's to get them used to the sensation of having their head under the water. Well, I didn't really like that, and I learned very quickly that 3 meant I was going under. So I would start sticking my fist in my mom's mouth so that she couldn't say 3, so I wouldn't have to go under. So it didn't really look like a good start, kind of a shaky start to my swimming career. But I'll never forget going to my sister's banquet when she was on the swim team when she was 8 years old, and she won the trophy for being the best 8 and under on our swim team. And I remember being in the car and my sister having that trophy and me thinking, okay, what's it going to take for me to win a trophy like that? And so at that point, there was a competitive flame that was ignited inside of me. And so maybe it wasn't the love for the water that got me into swimming, but it was definitely the love of competition. And that's, as far back as I can remember, that's the first time I ever set a goal, and it's that I wanted to win a trophy on the swim team. Now, luckily, I had a little bit of a rough start, but I wasn't really the best swimmer on the team. But eyes on my goal, wanted the trophy. I finally was able to win a trophy when I was 9 or 10 years old, and then that wasn't good enough anymore. So I wanted to make it to provincial championships. So qualified for my first provincial championships, and that wasn't good enough anymore. And that was kind of the way my career progressed, because eventually I got to this idea in my head that this ultimate goal was to go to the Olympics and represent Canada at the Olympics. And my mind was always set on Beijing. In 2004, I swam at my first Olympic trials. That was to pick the team for Athens. I did not make the team, but I did actually get to swim in my first final at an Olympic trial, so it was a great experience. I remember being terrified because I was in the ready room waiting for the turn I was sitting there with Joanne Millar and Marion Limpert, who were my heroes growing up, and I had a signed poster of Joanne Millar on my wall. That's still at that point, not just as a little kid. So to sit in the ready room with her and have to race her was pretty overwhelming. So I was pretty terrified, but it was a really, really good experience. I didn't make the team, but I was able to get some attention from some coaches down in the United States, and I started getting recruited by schools in the NCAA. I ended up choosing Texas A&M University, and I started my freshman year in the fall of 2005. So as per the norm of my career, my collegiate career started out a little bit rocky. My first year, I got injured at the very beginning because my body wasn't used to that kind of training. And then I did start swimming, and I did qualify for NCAAs, but I absolutely bombed, and I embarrassed myself, and I was really disappointed in my performances. But I came back to Canada that summer, and I actually ended up making my first ever national team, and I qualified for the Pan Pacific team the summer of 2006. In my 2007 season, again, not great collegiately, still trying to figure it out. That summer, I went to Canadian Nationals and I won the 100 backstroke, but I missed the Canadian record by less than a tenth of a second. And I thought to myself, okay, I really thought I could break this Canadian record. I barely missed it. What went wrong? What did I do wrong? What could I have done to gain that tenth of a second? And I didn't want to leave anything to chance going into the Olympic year. So I really started preparing myself to do whatever it took to make the Olympic team that following spring in 2008. And I mean, I did everything from from no longer staying up past 9 o'clock at night because I was trying to get as much sleep as possible to maximize my recovery. I was turning down that bowl of ice cream after dinner, even though I have a huge sweet tooth, so that was really hard for me. But all those little tiny sacrifices, working on everything in practice, little tiny details, always trying to get myself better because I didn't want to leave anything to chance. So I actually found that this whole new way of training and living really had a huge benefit on my collegiate season that year as well. So my third year of university, my junior year, I actually finally figured it out. I went to NCAA's and I came second in the 100-yard freestyle, which at the time was the highest ever performance by a swimmer at Texas A&M University at the NCAA championships. From NCAA's, I then went on to Olympic trials, and I will never forget my first event was the 100-meter backstroke. So I think about the summer before where I was really close to the Canadian record and not quite broken it. I had a great prelim swim, and going into the final, I remember thinking about the final in 2004 when I was in the room with Joanne Millar and Marion Limpert, and I was really nervous. And I just told myself, no matter how nervous you might be, just pretend you're really confident. So I put on my headphones and I just put on this face that I was just like so confident. And I realized that if I was trying to trick everyone else into thinking I was confident, in turn, I tricked myself. So for the 100 backstroke, well, for any backstroke race, you start in the water. You don't start on the blocks. So we jumped in the water for the race, and I remember holding onto the block, looking at my hands with a big smile on my face, thinking, you're about to make the Olympic team. And it was one of the coolest moments of my life. And I did. So I qualified for the Canadian Olympic team. My first event was the 100 backstroke. I then went on to qualify for a couple more events. So I got to swim more than once in Beijing. I ended up having my best ever performance was in the 200 IM. I came 7th, so I got to swim in the big final where the top 3 girls won medals. And I was really happy. I had some of my best time. I had felt like I had represented Canada well, but I really looked at those girls on the podium and I thought, that's going to be me in 4 years. That's what I want. I want to win a medal for Canada. So I returned back to school to start my 4th year of university. And I started noticing I was having some pretty bad pain in my right shoulder. And as swimmers, we always have pain, especially in our shoulders, because our shoulders get so overused. So I tried not to think too much into it, but it got so unbearable after a couple days back in the pool that they sent me to see the orthopedic surgeon. I had an MRI, and a couple days later I got a call and they told me that I had a 4-centimeter tear in my labrum in my shoulder, and that I had 2 options. One was to take the year off and do extensive rehab that probably wouldn't work, or 2, take the year off and have shoulder surgery that had a pretty good chance of working. Either way, I wasn't going to be swimming that season. And I was absolutely devastated. I'd just come back from the Olympics. I'd made the final. I was the captain of my team. I thought I was awesome. I was on top of the world at this point. And then all of a sudden I get this call that I realized I was human and I was breakable. And no matter how hard I worked, things were going to happen that were out of my control. So I ended up having shoulder surgery on October 2nd, 2008. Only 2 months after I stood on the blocks in Beijing, thinking that I was finally on my way, finally the swimmer I'd always dreamed of being from the time I was 6 years old. And it was really hard because I suddenly realized that my entire identity was tied up in being a swimmer. And all the sacrifices I'd made along the way, and all my friends, and even my older sister, everyone was tied to swimming. And so much of my confidence came from swimming. And I really felt lost for a really long time. And I spent a lot of time wondering if maybe I should just quit because it was too painful. It was too painful physically, and it was too painful emotionally. And I would call my mom crying in the middle of the night and tell her that I'd had my Olympics and maybe I was done. I didn't need to go to London. And I didn't need to keep trying. And then I finally realized that I wanted to go out on my terms. I didn't want to go out because of something out of my control, like an injury. And I would never forgive myself if I gave up in that moment. So it took a while. It took a ton of support from my teammates, from my family, from the physiotherapists and the doctors. But I got to a point where I sort of regained my love for the sport. And I had surgery in October. I had my first normal practice in May. So it took a really long time to get back to feeling close to myself again. But I ended up having a fabulous year that following year, because I came back from my last year of eligibility at Texas A&M, and at the NCAA championships, I managed to get my hand on the wall first in the 100-yard freestyle, and I became Texas A&M's first ever NCAA champion 2 years after I'd been the runner-up in the event. So 2 years after I'd come second, and I'd had to wait through surgery and through rehab and recovery, and I was able to bring home the national title for my university. And all my teammates ran down from the stands and swarmed me behind the block because they were just so excited, because they knew like what I'd been through and how tough it had been for me to not give up, basically. So I look back at those moments where I really thought that I was going to quit, and it's crazy because of all the cool things I've gotten to do and things I've achieved on the other side of having surgery that I would never have if I just stopped. Those days that I was so disappointed and I was so frustrated, and I won a national championship. I got to go to 2 more world championships. I won 3 Commonwealth Games bronze medals, and I also got to go to my second Olympic Games. So my second Olympic Games were in London, England, and I wanted to be that person who could bring home a medal for Canada. No Canadian swimmer has won a gold medal at the Olympics since 1992, and no Canadian woman has won a swimming medal in any color since 1996. And I wanted to be the person that changed that. And I really, really thought I could. I really believed that I was doing everything to make that happen. And my dream of standing on the podium for Canada at the Olympics ended in the semifinals by 8/100ths of a second when I came 9th. And I was devastated. And I remember walking back to the warm down pool just feeling like in disbelief that this had happened, that I'd come back from surgery and I'd worked so hard and done everything I thought I was supposed to do, and I'd failed and I'd come up short. And I spent that night lying in my bed in the village, and every time I closed my eyes, I'd see the words, "You're a failure, you're a failure." And then I remember it was the social media Olympics, of course, so we all had access to Twitter and Facebook, and a little girl from my hometown of Stratford, her mother took a picture of her wearing her swim cap sideways and her huge goggles, holding a sign that said, "We still love you, Julia." Even though I'd come 9th, even though I'd failed to bring home a medal for Canada. And to me, then I realized that it wasn't about standing on the podium, and it wasn't about winning a medal, because I am who I am because of setting the goals and because of working so hard to get there, not because of what I can hold in my hand at the end of an Olympic Games. And so I know that the important thing was that I can look in the mirror, and I did everything I could to achieve that, and it's made me stronger, and it's made me way stronger and tougher, and be able to get through hard things in life because of the hard things I went through in swimming, which swimming is supposed to be fun. Sport is supposed to be fun. So I guess the point is, it's so important to make goals and to go for your goals and to go for your dreams. And that sounds so cliche, but goals, striving for the goal, that's what's going to make you who you are. That's going to define you, not whether or not you fail or you succeed. And any goal worth reaching has got to be a tough one. And if it's so tough, there's a high likelihood that you might fail. And I'm living proof that you can fail, and it's not going to kill you. It's going to make you stronger. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and keep setting those goals. Thank you.